This is the Braga Cathedral, the most important church in all of Braga, in a city that's absolutely filled with churches. I could say that there's a church on every corner, but that wouldn't even be an exaggeration. I mean, there are churches everywhere here in Braga. Now, there's a few of these main churches that we visited, but there's also smaller, lesser known churches. And you can just walk in and, as long as you're being respectful, you can look around and just see the ornate magnificence of these churches, some of which have extraordinary tile murals in them, real works of art. But you'll probably want to go into the Braga Cathedral when you get here. Now, a little bit of history. The reason why I think Braga has so many churches and why it's so important is they can actually trace the history of Christianity in this city back to the 1st century AD, back to the Roman times. I'm no biblical scholar. I'm not a member of any church, but my understanding is that in the 1st century, the very first bishop of Braga was Pedro de Ratis in the year 45 of the Common Era. That's when he converted to Christianity, and he started to try and convert others. He was converted by James, the apostle of Jesus. So if you want to do your 6 degrees of Jesus, well, you got 2 degrees with this guy, Pedro de Ratis. So he's trying to convert people here in Braga. He does so for about 15 years until he's martyred, ran afoul of the Romans, and they said no more of that. He said, I'm going to still do it, so they martyred him. And they started building one of these first churches. Now, obviously none of this dates from the 1st century, but they kept building on it, and it's quite magnificent inside. Didn't take any pictures except in the courtyard, but it's really, really quite extraordinary to go inside this church. But I would again say, don't limit yourself to 1 or 2 churches here in Braga, because there's much smaller churches, just everyday churches, and you walk by, see if the door's open, walk in, and you will see some amazing tile work, real pieces of art in the altar, and it's really, really pretty amazing when you come to Braga. You'll also see tons of tour groups, so be prepared to elbow your way to get through and see what you want to see. This is Papa Lab, a ice cream shop here in Braga, and before I go into this particular place, let me tell you about ice cream in Portugal. So you'll see places that call themselves gelato shops, G-E-L-A-D-O, gelato. That just means ice cream. So gelato, G-E-L-A-T-O, that's Italian gelato. This is just ice cream here in Portugal. So you see something that says gelato, it's not Italian, it's Portuguese ice cream. And my experience here, all right, I'm a self-professed ice cream snob, and so I don't usually like just regular run-of-the-mill industrial ice creams. And because of that, I haven't found much gelato that I really like here in Portugal. They're having a scout jamboree here in Braga today, so there goes another troop of scouts going by. Those kids are having a great time. So anyway, I haven't found much gelato that I really like in Portugal. It's been kind of tough because a lot of it is industrial, run-of-the-mill. ice cream that they're just churning out, and the quality, frankly, isn't that great. Our friends Clyde and Dave, when they found out we were coming to Braga, they said, "You've got to check out Papa Lab." And frankly, I was a bit skeptical because I'm always skeptical. But we came here the other day and we got the pistachio and chocolate. That was for Karen. I got the lemon and blackberry. And they were both terrific. Really, really good. By far and away the best I've had since here in Portugal. So we came back today. Wow. I got the hazelnut and pistachio combination in one. I gotta say, that hazelnut, really good. And then the real test, if you can make pistachio right, and their pistachio is really, really good. Good stuff. All right. I haven't had every gelato place in Portugal, but so far in the time that I've been here, Papa Lab, definitely number one. This is A Favorita Pastelaria, and don't let the name fool you. It's not just a bakery, although they do serve various different pastries in there and pastiche and whatnot. But they've also got a little bar, and call this place a hole in the wall wouldn't be doing it justice. It's got this coolest little retro radio that they're jamming music from inside, and a bunch of regulars in there drinking coffee and sipping on wine and whatnot. So I thought we'd come by here. I spent a lot of time trying to research a nice wine bar here in Braga, and it's been really difficult in order to try and find one. And what I finally came to the conclusion of is just walk around, find a cafe. Everyone serves wine. Maybe you're not going to have a formal wine tasting with flights of wine and trying all these different varietals and whatnot, but instead just go in and get a glass of the house wine and, just go with it. So what did I get? I got a glass of espumante. Maybe you can see on the video the bubbles in here. It's very lightly bit of effervescence in there. So it's not like a champagne or anything like that where it's intense with the bubbles. Very light, dry, not bad. And then I got a glass of the house red wine. Fruity. It's a house wine. Nothing too special. But it's just a great place to sit here and hang out, watch the world go by. We are just across the street from a church where we saw a wedding earlier today. At least we saw the bride and groom coming out of a wedding. And you're a block up from the Praça da República. So this is a cool spot to come and hang, and altogether, these two cost me €1.90. So a little bit over $2 American for two nice glasses and a great place to hang for a few minutes before we go to dinner. $550 steps up, only about 25 to go. Just kidding, we took a bolt up here. But it is literally 575 steps from the bottom to the top of the church here, the Bom Jesus do Monde. This is an absolutely incredible spot, and we decided to come up here in order to see the sunset. Now, a couple of things you need to know if you decide to do like we did and come up here to see the sunset. Number one, the funicular that will take you up and help you bypass the steps, if you want to take that, that's closed after the church closes. So if we were to try and take the funicular, we would have been out of luck. If you want to take a ride share, it'll take you up here to the base, and then it's a 5 less than 10-minute walk to get up here. So that's an option. Or you can hike up all of these steps, 575 steps. It's absolutely incredible scenery. And of course, this is a Christian site, so there are pilgrims who go up all 575 steps on their knees. I wouldn't recommend it if you've got a bad wheel, but you know, to each his own. On the top, I thought it was going to be just a big church. And that's the other thing. The church also closes at like 6 o'clock or something like that, well before sunset. So we didn't get to go inside the church, but we really wanted to come up here for the sunset. So the church is closed. We'll have to come back at a later time. But in addition to the church, the grounds around here are spectacular. There's gardens and tons of statues. There's a couple high-end hotels up here too. And there's a little like gazebo and man-made cave, and every landing here has a fountain. You see this fountain behind me? There's fountains on every landing coming up the stairs. It's awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping. So we're going to have to come back to go into the church, but I would say, man, this is a must visit if you come here. Probably can't walk out here. It's a pretty far walk, but if you can, come out here to see the sunset or to go in and see the church. We're going to have to come back and see that because I understand the church inside is magnificent as well. I can't see how it wouldn't be with all this ornate carvings and architecture and design on the way up here. So we're going to find a spot and watch the sun go down, and hopefully I'll be able to catch some video of that for you. So I've been asking around some more about whether there's a wine bar here in Braga, and consensus seems to be that no, there's not really a place that's dedicated to just, you know, doing flights of wine and whatnot. I got told about several different wine shops, which are nice. You can go in and buy some nice wine here. But it's a little bit surprising that there's not more places that are just dedicated to wine. We are right in the middle of wine country up here in the Porto wine region. Vinho Verde is hugely produced in this area. It's one of the big economic drivers of this area, export and Vinho Verde. And you can find Vinho Verde in a lot of places. Maybe that's why. It's just so ubiquitous that no one's bothered to open up a wine bar specifically, or maybe there's just not demand for it. I don't know the reason. But because of that, what we're doing is we're just popping into places and just getting wine. Makes things a little bit more difficult because, you know, when you go into a cafe or a place that sells beer or something like that, they're not going to have a huge selection of wine. You're not going to get the finest of wine. But you know what? Vinho Verde is an everyday drinking wine. In general, you're not looking for this really high-end Vinho Verde. That's just, it doesn't exist because it's such a young wine. So anyway, with all of that said, we popped into this place, Botafogo. It's just around the corner from the apartment that we're staying at. And we'd walk by this place a couple of times, and Karen and I both commented about just how cool it looked. It reminded us of like a 1940s diner, not like a hamburger joint, but a diner, you know, kind of place you'd see in Chicago or in New York or something like that. Maybe they'd have a vending machine where they sell sandwiches out of, you know, that type of place. Long counter with stools. And this is 100% a locals place. And there were several people, it's pretty late, there were several people in there that were still ordering dinner. A couple old guys came in and ordered coffee, which, you know, I definitely can't do this late at night. But I wanted a Vinho Verde. So we went in, I got a Vinho Verde, and it was on tap, which is really nice. And a nice big pour of Vinho Verde, get that crisp lightness of the Vinho Verde with a little bit of effervescence with the bubbles. It's really delightful, and it's a great way to end the evening. And maybe we'll come back here tomorrow too, because this place is just, it's just so cool. It's just such a characteristically local Braga place. So Botafogo, this definitely goes on the list. This is São Martinho de Tabaixe in Braga, Portugal. And this place is actually not in Braga. It's about a 15-20 minute drive outside of Braga. So we grabbed a ride share and came out here. This place is so far beyond my imagination. I wanted to come out here because this is an example of the Rococo style of architecture that was like late Baroque. So if you know anything about Baroque architecture, it's defined by its fanciful nature. Lots of swirls, lots of gilding, lots of leafing, things like that. And just the intricacy of the stuff that's in this church is amazing. I thought it was just going to be a church, but it's got a giant cloister. It's massive in here, and then there are gardens outside, and you can take 2 walking routes. One is 45 minutes, one is 90 minutes. Now, here's the thing. We took a ride share out here. I don't know that there's a public transportation. I don't know that bus is an option. We did not rent a car to come out here. We took the train from Porto. So we don't have a car. We don't have a way to get out here. But we took the Bolt. And when I asked the lady who was driving if we would be able to get a Bolt back in there, she's like, nobody comes out here, which is true. Fair enough. I mean, we are out here. So I said, well, will you wait for it? And she said, oh, no problem at all. I'll wait for you. But now that I found out how big this place is, we're not going to have time to walk the gardens. We'll go outside, we'll take a look around and take a little bit of video, but we're not going to have time to walk around because I don't want her waiting. And then I really don't want her getting upset with me and taking off. So anyway, this church was originally built 1,000 years ago, believe it or not. Of course, this is not from 1,000 years ago. This church is much more recent than that. Baroque era is when this was designed. But man, I would really suggest, if you have a way to get out here, if you have a car or if you have someone reliable who's going to come pick you up, or maybe you hire a taxi driver to just sit and wait for you, I don't know. It would definitely be worth spending a few hours out here because the amount of cool stuff that they have is really amazing. Not just the carving in here. I mean, look at now this is not gold, it's just painted, but look at the intricacy of this. And then they have some amazing tile work in the cloister as well. It's really quite impressive and not at all what I expected. I expected to come out and see a really cool Baroque church and then we'd hop in the car and run back. It's really worth more time than that. And I think it was like €4 to get in and look around. So definitely worth your time when you come to Braga. So this congregational church behind me was designed by Andrei Sorish, and if you come to Braga, that's a name you're going to inevitably come across. He was known for designing a lot of municipal buildings here in the 17th century, but he also designed some churches as well. So if you go around and you read the placards that are in front of these buildings, you'll see his name pop up, and he designed this building behind me. It's a Sunday morning here in Braga, and you know, there's people out and about, but we've walked into a couple of churches here, and you'd think with a city that's so tied to Christianity that the churches would be filled with worshipers on a Sunday morning, but that's not really been my observation here. I think 2 things. First of all, I guess I think 3 things. One, there's scouts here this morning, so you might hear them chanting and shouting in the background. But seriously, the 2 things that come to mind is, one, a lot of these church buildings are not even churches anymore. They've become other buildings. We ran across one that's a public library, others that have been taken over by the city. You know, as congregations dwindled, the churches were empty and they had to find other uses for these buildings. So not all the churches that you see are actually churches. Some of them are just museums. They don't have a congregation associated with them. Some of them that still are churches, yeah, they have congregations. Last night, Saturday night, we walked into one and they were having a mass. I didn't film in there out of respect, but you know, there were, I don't know, 20 people in the church that were worshiping. So even though When you hear about Braga, you hear about all the churches and its ties to Christianity and early Christianity in Portugal. I wouldn't say it's an overly religious city. That's just my observation. Maybe I'm wrong. I think you got to understand what it means to be Catholic in Europe and in Portugal. You know, the overwhelming majority of people in Portugal identify as Catholic, something like 75, 80%. But that has a different meaning here in Portugal and in the rest of Europe. It doesn't mean you're in church every Sunday. It means maybe you're more culturally Catholic rather than practicing Catholic. Anyway, that's my observation, and it is nice to hear the church bells going off, whether people are worshiping or not.
Este tem.